There's a kind of mind that doesn't shout to be heard. It doesn't argue, doesn't chase, doesn't beg for attention. It just enters a room and everything, the ambition, the deceit, the flattery, the rebellion, freezes. Why? Because everyone there knows this mind cannot be manipulated. It isn't emotional. It sees through the masks people wear. And perhaps worst of all, it doesn't forgive in the way we've been taught to. This is the kind of mind that was once cultivated in secret, not for show, but for control. It was called the ruthless mind, not because it was cruel, but because it was immune to weakness, to guilt, and to all the noise of social politics. And once you build it, you don't have to command obedience. People just offer it. Let's begin with the foundation, the unshakable clarity of purpose. Most people are lost in a fog. They don't really know what they want or what they're serving. They're constantly flipping between chasing pleasure and feeling guilt, between ambition and fear, between loyalty and resentment. And because their goals shift with every passing emotion, their minds can be manipulated by anything: a compliment, a threat, a simple distraction. But the ruthless mind has one purpose, and everything else bends to it. This isn't the kind of clarity you get from a vision board or some motivational speech. This kind of clarity comes from a brutal conversation with yourself. You have to ask the hard questions. What do I truly want, beyond comfort or safety? Who do I have to become to get it? What am I willing to lose along the way? Once you've answered these questions, the noise disappears. You stop explaining yourself. You stop hesitating. You stop reacting to other people's opinions. Your purpose becomes your armor. Distraction becomes your enemy. Emotion becomes a tool you use, not a force that uses you. Most people just drift through life. You, however, are a force of nature. You drive. And that difference, that pure, unadulterated focus, terrifies them. Next, we need to master absolute control over emotional output. Here's a psychological truth you have to understand. People don't fear what you feel. They fear what they can't read. If you flinch when insulted, if you smirk when praised, if you stutter under pressure, you're giving them a map to control you. But the ruthless mind is a blank face. It's still, predictably, unreadable. It knows that the more you reveal, the less you control. Think of it this way. Your mind is a mirror. When you're provoked, it reflects calm. When you're praised, it reflects silence. When you're attacked, it reflects nothing. Because emotional reaction is currency, and the ruthless mind spends nothing. This doesn't mean you're numb. It means your feelings are disciplined soldiers, not reckless invaders. You can feel rage, joy, and sorrow, but only in private, never when they want you to. This controlled detachment is unnerving. It makes people question their own power. And when their manipulation fails, they shrink. Third, we have instant identification of weakness in others. The greatest weapon wasn't brutality, it was observation. A ruthless mind can listen to a person speak and know what breaks them. You listen not just for answers, but for the tells. The word they repeat too often, the silence they avoid, the person they keep defending, the moment they seek validation. These aren't just quirks. They're psychological cracks. They're the places where power leaks out. A ruthless mind is a predator of information. It asks, what does this person crave? What do they fear losing? Who do they try to impress? What makes them irrational? Then you say nothing. You just keep the knowledge. You use it when it matters. Because when you speak to a person's deepest fear, without them ever revealing it, you don't need to dominate them. They submit internally. And this brings us to the fourth point, the removal of guilt as a decision maker. Society trains you to obey guilt. We're taught to think about how they'll feel, to be nice, to not hurt anyone. This is a brilliant strategy if you want to stay weak. Because guilt isn't morality. It's an emotional program installed by others to make sure you serve their comfort. The ruthless mind checks every guilty feeling with one question. Is this guilt valid, or is it just a leash? You can't build power while you're constantly apologizing for wanting more. Sometimes, you have to disappoint people who drain you. You have to ignore pleas for one more chance. You have to say no without giving a reason. You have to walk away from the emotional blackmail of people who are addicted to your attention. And when that guilt rises, you don't fight it. You don't obey it. You just watch it. And then you make your choice based on strategy, not emotion. Once people learn that guilt no longer works on you, their grip on you is gone. The final foundational layer of the ruthless mind and its most feared trait is a cold internal motto: I am already alone. Most people walk around silently begging for validation. Validate me. Stay with me. Don't leave me. Tell me I matter. And because they crave connection above all else, they compromise. They tolerate disrespect. They delay their goals. They shrink for the approval of people who wouldn't bleed for them. But the ruthless mind starts from a different premise. I am already alone. I owe nothing. And anyone who joins me must add strength, not weight. This doesn't mean isolation. It means independence before interaction. You don't need them. You choose them. And if they become disloyal, disrespectful, or dangerous, you don't react. You release them, without begging, without warning, and without regret. That level of emotional self-sufficiency paralyzes people because they realize they can no longer use loneliness as leverage against you. Now that the foundation is set, we move to the next phase: how to use this mind in social warfare, how to win without fighting, and how to make others question themselves just by standing still. A ruthless mind isn't about chaos or cruelty. It's about a kind of clarity so sharp it cuts through every mask in the room. You don't fight, you don't flinch, you don't explain. You simply look at someone and they begin to doubt themselves. This isn't magic, it's strategy. In this part, we turn from the internal foundation to the external effect. Now that your mind is unshakable, we learn how to use it to paralyze people without lifting a finger. The stare that reads souls. This is the power of observational dominance. Most people speak to be heard. You observe to see what's hidden. You walk into a room and say nothing. You scan. Who's performing for the crowd? Who's genuinely uncomfortable? Who's trying too hard to impress? Who's watching you too closely? By saying less than anyone else, you force everyone else to reveal more. This is a core principle. Silence isn't an absence, it's an extraction. The ruthless mind doesn't just watch, it studies, like a surgeon looking for weaknesses under the skin. And when someone feels they are being studied, calmly, wordlessly, without emotion, they begin to feel naked. Their ego cracks, their confidence trembles, they fidget, they over-explain. They try to win your approval, but you don't give it. That's when the power shifts. Speak in precision, or not at all. Here's a rule of thumb for the ruthless mind. Every word must either clarify, correct, or control. No gossip, No unnecessary stories, no moral speeches. Every time you speak, it should interrupt the predictable pattern of the room. For example, when others exaggerate, you understate. When others ramble, you speak in short, lethal truths. When others joke to disarm, you remain perfectly still, stone calm. This contrast alone makes people nervous. They start to wonder, why isn't he reacting like us? What does she know that we don't? Your detachment becomes a mystery, and in social dynamics, mystery is a form of paralysis. When someone doesn't know how to read you, they default to caution. That's control without commands. Let people hang themselves with their own words. A ruthless mind knows you never argue with the foolish. You observe and let them dig their own grave. When someone tries to insult you, stay still. When they speak too much, just nod slightly. When they lie, make a mental note, not a correction. The moment you show no emotional response, they grow more desperate to provoke one. And eventually they say too much. They reveal their jealousy, their insecurity, their obsession. Now you know exactly where to strike without ever having to strike. The idea is to let them expose themselves fully, then make one decisive move, often later, when it matters most. Patience isn't weakness, it's strategic cruelty. Reject the need to be liked to be respected. Most minds are enslaved by the need for likability. They chase smiles, approval, and inclusion, and in doing so, they become soft, predictable, and easily manipulable. But the ruthless mind isn't here to be liked. It's here to be felt, to be remembered, to be feared for its silence, not praised for its charm. This doesn't mean you have to be rude. It means you have to be indifferent to approval. Say what needs to be said, whether it comforts or cuts. Walk away without needing applause. Let your absence say more than your presence ever could. People may not like you, but they will think about you when they make decisions, and that's more valuable than any compliment. Control the frame of every interaction. In every conversation, one thing is true. Someone sets the frame, and the other reacts. The frame defines what the conversation is about, who's in control, and what matters. Weak minds walk into other people's frames. They answer questions, defend themselves, and try to explain their value. The ruthless mind ignores the question, redirects the topic, and sets the terms. For example, if someone asks, "Why did you do that?" A ruthless mind might respond, "Why does it matter to you?" If you're insulted publicly, respond with silence and walk away. No defense. If you're questioned aggressively, just smile faintly and change the subject. Every time you refuse to be pulled, you reinforce your position. I am not here to win your approval. I control what matters. Once people learn they can't control the narrative around you, they stop trying. They adapt to your frame, or they fall silent. That's how you dominate social dynamics without raising your voice. Let reputation speak. Before you do, the most ruthless minds don't need long introductions because by the time they arrive, their reputation enters the room first. And a reputation built on silence, strategic detachment, and psychological unpredictability does more than intimidate. It paralyzes. People think, he never explains himself. She cut someone off for less than this. He's dangerous, not because he's loud, but because he doesn't flinch. This aura is built slowly by never reacting emotionally, by walking away when disrespected, and by delivering consequences without announcements. Eventually, people fear not just crossing you, but confusing you. Because confusion leads to silence, and silence in your world is exile. By now, the transformation is underway. You've killed the need for approval. You've trained your silence to speak louder than words, and you've turned your observations into invisible weapons. But a ruthless mind isn't built just to defend. It's designed to pressurize reality itself, to shift the air in a room without violence, to disarm the clever without ever speaking, and to make powerful people feel unsure around you. And for that, you must learn how to tighten the grip invisibly. Now, you must learn how to tighten the grip invisibly. Weaponize your silence. Weak silence is just awkwardness. But when used deliberately, silence becomes a form of psychological compression. Here's how it works. Someone asks a personal question. You pause, make eye contact, and say nothing. Someone makes an accusation. You look at them, unblinking, not angry, not sad, just still. Someone confesses something inappropriate, trying to test your boundaries. You don't laugh. You don't respond. You just stare politely, as if you didn't even hear them. What happens? They start to unravel. They try to fill the silence. They over-explain. They retract their statements. They stutter. You've said nothing, yet they've exposed themselves. This is the simple rule of a ruthless mind. The one who must speak first loses. Every time you hold a silence longer than is expected, you transfer the pressure from yourself to them. And most people break under that pressure without even realizing it. Stay unpredictable in small, controlled doses. A ruthless mind doesn't need to be wild or chaotic. It just needs to introduce uncertainty. Why? Because predictability makes people comfortable, and uncertainty makes them cautious. And caution means they submit their freedom of action. Here's how you use it. If you always reply instantly, suddenly delay your response. If you usually show warmth, go cold for a day. If you're expected to praise, give a sharp correction instead. If someone is always testing your patience, just disappear without a word. These aren't tantrums. They are calculated interruptions of a pattern. It keeps people wondering, did I go too far? Is he angry? What changed? The moment they start to second-guess themselves around you, you've already taken the upper hand. You've made your emotional availability a privilege, and everyone becomes desperate to regain it. Leave psychological traps. This is one of the most advanced tactics of the ruthless mind. You don't just react to people. You plant situations to study how they behave under pressure. You know that reputation hides character, but stress reveals it. Here's how you do it. Delay a favor they expect and observe their patience. Introduce a false rumor near someone and see if they run to repeat it. Test loyalty by sharing a secret with one person and see where it surfaces. Go silent on a manipulator and watch how long they can last without poking you. These aren't cruel games. They are filters. You're sorting. Who can hold their tongue? Who is easily rattled? Who has loose loyalties? Who only stands by you when they're being fed? The ruthless mind doesn't wait to be betrayed. It flushes out betrayal early and calmly removes it. Never let people know what punished them. This is a masterstroke. When someone crosses the line, you don't lash out. You don't send a message. You don't explain why you're pulling back. You just shift quietly, subtly, permanently. Maybe you stop sharing with them. Maybe they're no longer invited. Maybe your replies go from warm to neutral. They'll feel it. They'll panic silently. They'll ask mutual friends, "Did I do something wrong? Is he mad at me?" And no one knows, because you never made it public. This creates a terrifying effect. they begin to punish themselves. The mind of the offender turns inward. Was it that joke I made? Maybe I talked too much. Should I apologize? They replay the memory 100 times, slowly breaking their own sense of certainty. Meanwhile, you move on, completely unfazed, completely in control. Practice cold mercy power isn't in destruction. It's in offering survival under your rules. Sometimes the most ruthless act is to let someone live with what they've done. Don't respond to the insult. Don't reply to the betrayal. Don't chase an apology. Just let them carry the weight of their mistake. And when they return, trying to make things right, look them in the eye and say, "We're fine." Not "I forgive you," not "let's fix it." Just, "We're fine," said with the tone of someone who has moved completely past them. This kind of detachment is lethal. It tells them you didn't need revenge. You didn't need drama. You just outgrew the situation and them. This crushes the ego more than any attack ever could. Protect your internal world like a fortress. All of this means nothing if you let someone gain access to your inner world too easily. A ruthless mind is not just guarded. It is sacred. You do not overshare vulnerabilities to feel close. You don't seek therapy and friendships to confess weakness just to connect. You share your internal world only with those who have been tested and have proven themselves worthy of your trust. Why? Because if people know too much about how you feel, what you fear, and what you want, they will use it. Even the ones who love you, especially them. So you build a fortress. Your journals stay locked. Your dreams stay private. Your wounds are healed in silence. Your strategies are revealed after they have been executed, never before. The more people have to guess about what's inside your mind, the more powerful your presence becomes. By now, the ruthless mind is no longer just an idea. It's a reality forming inside you. It's still, it's cold, it's sharp. You no longer beg to be understood. You no longer fear being disliked. And you no longer bleed for people who would never do the same for you. This final phase is about making it permanent, so that the way you move through life itself becomes a silent system of psychological dominance. Not because you wish to harm, but because you refuse to be disarmed. This isn't Machiavellian cruelty. It is Machiavellian clarity. And with it, you become the kind of person no one wants to cross because they don't know if they'll come back the same. Let's finish it. Become the unpredictable constant. Here is the central paradox of the ruthless mind. You are predictable in your values, but unpredictable in your response. Everyone knows your laws. Respect is non-negotiable. Disloyalty ends everything. And emotional chaos does not override strategy. But how you enforce them is something no one can quite predict. Sometimes you disappear. Sometimes you correct once with a stare. Sometimes you smile and say nothing at all. It's this psychological fog that makes people tread lightly. Because a ruthless mind is like a quiet forest. It's beautiful, it's still, and it's full of life. But everyone knows, take the wrong step and something deadly wakes up. Stretch time to win power. A ruthless mind does not rush because it knows a simple truth. The slower you move, the more power you hold. When someone offends you, wait. When someone lies, don't confront them immediately. When a major decision arises, say, "Let me think." Why? Because people expect emotionally driven immediacy. They are conditioned for a reaction. But when you delay your response, you create pressure. You create uncertainty. You show that your time is your own. You think before speaking. You observe before striking. You pause before deciding. This shows one thing above all else. You are not emotionally possessed. In a world full of impulsive minds, that's a terrifying kind of intelligence. Let people destroy themselves, trying to understand you. When your mind becomes unreadable, something remarkable happens. People project themselves onto you. They assume you're angry when you're just focused. They think you're arrogant when you're just detached. They believe you're mysterious when you're just being strategic. And in their attempts to figure you out, they expose themselves. They reveal their insecurity, their desire for closeness, their need for approval. Say little, react less, and correct no one. The more people guess about who you are, the more they lose control of who they are when they're around you. And that's the essence of psychological leverage. Enforce boundaries with surgical coldness. You are not cold because you lack feeling. You're cold because you enforce your limits like law. And when someone crosses a boundary, you do not negotiate. You pull back instantly. You cut access immediately. You give no closure. They will ask why? You respond, you know why. Or even better, you don't respond at all. You don't over-explain. You don't try to make peace. You don't invite a second betrayal. The ruthless mind believes that a ruler who tolerates small disobedience invites greater rebellion. You are the ruler of your world. And the moment someone violates your standard, even once, you teach them through consequence, not conversation. Operate on two layers, persona and intellect. A ruthless mind is never fully visible. It has two layers. The persona is calm, polite, reserved, and just warm enough to disarm others. This is your armor. It keeps the world from seeing your full arsenal. The intellect is hyper-observant, pattern-seeking, and cold in its calculations, always weighing risk, power, leverage, and exposure. This is your weapon. It works while you smile, while you nod, and while you pretend not to notice. No one suspects the fire under your stillness until it burns them without warning. Use memory as a ledger, not a wound. The average mind forgives too easily or forgets too late. But the ruthless mind uses memory strategically. It logs betrayal like a ledger. No emotion, just fact. It remembers false praise, shady silences, and selective kindness. It recalls exactly who was a liability and who was an asset. And when it's time to rise, to choose, to remove, or to promote, this memory speaks first. It doesn't replay the pain. It doesn't seek revenge. It simply adjusts access. That's the quiet power of memory when it's used for positioning, not for pity. Let people regret losing access to you. Most people teach the world, you can hurt me and I'll still care. But a ruthless mind flips the script. Once access is gone, it never returns. The moment people realize that, they feel regret. Not because they loved you, but because they can't replace you. You didn't beg. You didn't fight. You just vanished with full clarity and no noise. They talk. You build. They wonder. You rise. They gossip. You become untouchable. Final rule: make peace with being misunderstood. Not everyone will understand your coldness, your stillness, your sudden absences, or your refusal to explain yourself. Let them misunderstand. A lion does not need the sheep to approve of his silence. And you, now forged, clear, and lethal in your clarity, no longer live for applause. You live to create silence in others. You live to stand where others break. You live to move the world by not moving at all. That's not just power. That's a mind so ruthless it paralyzes.